Good evening, founders. Hello, actually, to everyone, wherever you are. I am Avocat Olivia Marcu-Iordanescu, and I partner with high-performing tech scale-ups to streamline their legal processes so they get 8+ figure funding fast and efficiently without legal bottlenecks or company valuation issues. And in this session, in this live session, I want to share with you about an interesting topic that I came across in the past few months. But before I start, just let me know in the comments who's joining in, where are you from? It's really a joy to see you again. It's been a while. And I'm super excited to be here with you tonight. I know the topic for this evening is not as exciting, but I am going to try to make it a little more fun because I have to say GDPR compliance is not something that we talk about every day, right? It may be something of concern, especially for technology startups and small businesses. And I think it's time to kind of dissipate and make these concerns go away. I want to set the record straight on some of the misconceptions I've heard in conversations in legal strategy sessions with my clients. And so I really want to share with you that, and we're going to have a little fun together discovering whether or not the GDPR applies to you and in what situations, right? So let's dig in. I'd like to first start by asking you, what would be the impact of a 4% fine applied on your annual worldwide turnover for the preceding financial year today? If you were to get today such a fine, what would be the impact in your cash flow, in your business today in these market conditions? And I'm just going to pause here and give you a moment to make that calculation. I know you know your numbers, and it's really easy to calculate that. So I'll just give you a second. And in the meantime, I'm going to check everyone's online and we are live and kicking. Right. So getting present to that, right? By making this calculation, you actually get to see what the impact in your business would be from infringing the GDPR, the rules that are prescribed by the General Data Protection Regulation that applies within the European Union and beyond. Okay, and we're going to see why that is. But first, I want to share with you what these 8 most common misconceptions are. And like I said, try to make it a little more relaxing and fun. And so let's have a look. The first one is, I'm a small business or I'm a startup, and I'm only processing a limited amount of data, so there is little to no risk. Like GDPR doesn't touch me, or I'm not affected by it. Article 4.1 and 2 of the GDPR provides the definitions of what personal data is, first of all, and also what processing is. And so while the content of the compliance obligations for you as a startup or a small business may differ, right, depending on the size of the company, there is no distinction in the regulation between large amounts of data being processed or small amounts of data. Rather, any processing of personal data will trigger compliance obligations for you. So it's really important, right, to set this ground. And I really wanted to start with this And, if you want to make it fun, I do recommend you printing out these definitions from the General Data Protection Regulation and just hang it out in your headquarters, in your office, email it to all of your team members, and kind of do a read through together with your team, because I can assure you, you are going to start having some realizations when it comes to the processing activities that are happening or you thought are not happening within your organization, irrespective of the size of the organization. Second, another misconception is, and we are getting now to the size criteria, right? If I have less than 250 employees, I don't need to do anything. The GDPR doesn't apply to me. I've heard this in the conversations I've had with clients. I've seen it on groups, on social media. It's really interesting. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the fact that there is indeed a derogation in the General Data Protection Regulation, namely in Article 35. But this derogation is only in relation to records of processing activities. Yeah, there are other compliance obligations in respect to recording processing activities. And the other thing I want you to keep in mind is that this derogation that the GDPR provides to companies with less than 250 employees is not absolute. What that means is that basically you really have to read through the conditions of this derogation to understand, am I actually in one of the scenarios there? And does it really mean just because I don't have 250 employees that the GDPR does not apply to me? The third misconception is that the data protection authorities is not concerned with small businesses or startups. It only goes for the big fish, like we like to say, right? Because that's where the big money is, the large fines. There are some regulating factors between markets and so on. And at the end of the day, we want to look at where the highest risk of data protection, of personal data being breached. But I want you to understand that when it comes to applying fines, the regulation does not distinguish according to the size of the company, but rather the fines are up to 4%, like I said in the beginning, of the annual worldwide turnover in the preceding financial year. And while it's true that in absolute amounts, fines will be larger for larger corporations, you still have to ask yourself, what is the impact going to be for you as a small business in your cash flow in today's economy, right? Mm-hmm. Fourth, I bought a DIY GDPR package. Some of you sometimes say, oh, I paid so much for it. And if I paid so much for it, it's gotta be good, I gotta be covered, right? I got a package, and so I'm covered. The problem is this: if you didn't purchase this package from a qualified attorney at law, or at least from a certified privacy professional, and if they did not perform an assessment and interviews with you and your team to actually look at what is your factual situation, what are the processing activities, what is the risk involved in your processing activities, and what would be adequate organizational and technical measures for your particular business, then you can simply consider this a sunk cost. And it's basically because you just have a bunch of papers in your company that do not reflect in any way what you're actually doing and how your business is transforming and how it's changing, and how is this supporting your activity going forward? Because GDPR compliance is not something that you do once and it's done. It's something that you need to do continuously. Fifth is pretty much similar to this, but it's a very interesting confusion. To this day, I see a lot of people say, I have a privacy policy, I published it on my website, and I'm covered. Now, privacy policy is only one ingredient. I cannot stress this enough. Is just one ingredient of your compliance program as a startup or small enterprise or company. And when I say small company, I just want to be clear about this. I also mean, maybe you are a solopreneur, maybe you are a coaching professional, maybe you just run a virtual assistant or social media management or a creative agency, right? You're a one-man show, a one-woman show. The GDPR applies to you too, right? But coming back to the privacy policy, the privacy policy is just one small ingredient in your compliance program. And there is a distinction between a privacy policy and a privacy notice or a privacy statement. And so my question is, are you sure you have both? And then what are the ramifications from having these documents published on your website? Actually, only the notice needs to be on your website. What are the ramifications behind? How are things happening behind what you are actually declaring publicly? But I don't want to get into the details of that. Let's just stick to the fun misconception list that we are discussing today. Sixth is, I only save my customers' data locally on my own computer or server, God knows where. When we get into the details of this conversation, what comes up is that there's actually also that active campaign tool that I'm using, or MailChimp, or whatever it is. And there's also, I don't know what, Notion or Asana or Slack, where I'm managing communications and projects with my clients. And so we end up discovering that there is a wealth of tools that we are using and where we are storing the personal data. And so this raises a security concern, because Article 32.1 of the GDPR imposes the obligation, whether you are a controller or a processor of the personal data, to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. What does that mean? Well, in practice, like I said before, only a factual assessment of your specific processing activities can lead us to a conclusion of what type of, or how far your technical and organizational measures should go, and whether or not simply storing them on a secure server or in a cloud will suffice. There is encryption, there are many pseudonymization, there are many other measures and principles in the GDPRs that you really need to look into and assess whether or not it's applicable to you. And oftentimes, like I say, in practice, we discover in our initial assessments, in the interviews that we conduct with clients, that the data is actually scattered and that there is a lack of awareness within the organization of where the data is stored and how it's processed, even between departments or team members. Great. 7. I am not in the European Union. I'm in the USA, in Canada, in Australia. Sorry, I'm just going to have a sip of water. And the EU GDPR does not apply to me. Okay, so this is very common. I myself am have subscribed to several newsletters that are provided by suppliers from across the ocean, right? And actually recently I noticed that there was this particular business advisor that was sending me newsletters and emails to give me updates and invite me to their events. And I wanted to unsubscribe because it's been a while that I haven't even opened the emails. And guess what? When I tried to click the unsubscribe button, there was an error. I wasn't being directed anywhere. And so I wasn't able to unsubscribe, namely to withdraw my consent under the GDPR, lawfully, so that I don't receive these communications anymore. And the question is, of course, and I can understand why a lot of companies that are not incorporated in a European Union jurisdiction, in a European Union country, they have a legal entity in the USA or in Canada or whatever, can think it's very easy to think in that way. I am subject to US laws or to the federal state law, wherever they are incorporated, and the GDPR does not apply to me. This is completely false. The applicability of the General Data Protection Regulation to you as a startup or a small business or a solopreneur outside of the European Union, so it doesn't depend only on your jurisdiction of incorporation, where you get your registration number and you pay your taxes, so to say, but actually where you have your main seat of business, but actually it depends on what your processing activities relate to. Are you targeting EU customers? Are you targeting European Union markets? Good. Finally, we get to number 8. I get a lot of questions from my clients around how am I liable towards my clients? And this is in particular in respect to those clients who are serving corporations. So the situation is the following. You are a consultant, an advisor, or maybe a media agency. You are doing advertising or social media management or in this space, and you are serving a company. Maybe you are serving yourself, a small business, a startup, or even a large enterprise. And a lot of you ask, when we negotiate the contracts with your clients, with your corporate clients, how am I liable towards my clients, towards my corporate client? There is an exposure concern, so to say, right? Because you are the small business, and you are contracting with a large corporation, with an enterprise. And besides the fact that they have bargaining power, right, you also want to limit your liability as much as possible as a services provider. So this question arises a lot in our negotiations with the clients. And I like to call this, I will explain in a minute why it is a misconception. Everyone is so focused on not being liable towards their business partner for whatever services they have provided or deliverables that they forget in the process that the most important thing in this area is what you've been doing with the personal data of the individuals, right? So before even thinking, am I liable towards my client, towards my corporate client, your number one concern should be, am I liable towards these individuals whose personal data I've processed? who could they be? They could be the employees of the corporations. For instance, if you are a professional coach or advisor, or or a trainer, you are providing trainings and education to the employees. You are processing the personal data of those employees, of your clients' employees, right? Or it could be if you are a media agency and you have access to personal data for ad campaigns or marketing campaigns, whatever promotional activities you are managing on behalf of your corporate client, then you are processing that personal data. For example, the emails of the private individuals that your clients are targeting and the media campaigns you are managing on their behalf. So now that we are clear that there is personal data, right, that is being processed in this particular instance, the question arises why you should be concerned first and foremost with this processing activity and not so much with your liability towards your business partner, your client. Because in case of a data breach, you are going to be liable for the entire damage, whether you were a controller or a processor of the personal data. And thereafter, depending on the circumstances, there will be a question of what is your liability towards your corporate client. And so what I really want you to take away from today's live is that when we think about GDPR compliance, and we, of course, want to be compliant, we want to have the best practices, policies, procedures in place, I want you to keep in mind that it's not just about ticking a box or avoiding liability or all of these things. No, it's about the personal data of private individuals that you get access to in some shape or form, and you want to treat it lawfully. And again, send me any questions you have. I haven't seen any questions so far from you, but I'm also open if you want to send me your questions via DM or just leave them here in the thread, in the post. The video is going to stay on for a little while longer. Please consider that these misconceptions are at the source of infringements of the regulation. And so my intention was to raise your awareness around them from practice, from what I've seen in practice. And to support you in making GDPR compliance simple and fun. Also, I want to remind you or let you know if you haven't noticed already, I have a limited time offer this week. I'm offering a GDPR compliance program. I only have 4 spots available until the end of this week. Hurry up, get yourself signed up. If you want in, DM me. And we are going to look beyond paperwork and documentation and boxes you need to tick. We're going to look at actually your processes, your activities. And as a bonus to you, we are going to look at how you can leverage that data that you already collected and monetize it in a lawful way. Thank you for being here tonight and watching. Thank you for watching even afterwards. I'm Avocat Olivia Marcu-Iordanescu, and I will see you again next week, next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central European Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And follow me on LinkedIn for more legal hacks for tech startups and small businesses. Bye.